So, welcome back for the second week, everybody. It's lovely to see you all. I'm glad to be practicing together. Um, and if for whatever reason you didn't join last week, I think there's a few new faces this week. We're doing a series relating the neuroscience, the known study of the brain that has been done so far as it relates to meditation and as it relates to other activities of the mind. And we're relating that to our actual experience. So we've called it applied neuroscience of meditation. The idea here is that these different ideas or theoretical concepts that we might be talking about uh, can actually be supportive for your practice. They can actually give you concepts to touch into a little bit, places to explore. So last week we focused on what? We focused on attention rather than intention, or sorry, intention rather than attention. And we talked about the difference between those. And not that one is better than the other. Actually, we talked a lot about how attention is important, but so often we consider our practice a practice of attention. And actually, Dr. Patel, who I was just speaking to maybe yesterday or earlier today, we were talking about practice and reminded me uh, something of the same note that actually our practice is about intention and it's not indeed about a specific feeling or a specific experience that we're going for in any moment, whether that feeling is feeling relaxed or loving or at ease or calm. It's actually the intention to move in that direction that guides our practice. So that was last week. And this week, uh, contrary to what I just said, in a way, we'll talk about feeling a little bit. So what we've called this week is tuning the body and mind to a strong signal. And what I really mean to bring into the conversation there is that, well, a couple different things. One is that so often when we come into practice, we think of it as another task. It's kind of like a workout for the mind. That's something that I often harp on is that sure, this can be a workout for your mind. It does practice some skills we're not as used to, and you can develop skill. It's certainly true. So in that sense, workout might be appropriate. But sometimes we think about it a little bit too much like a task or an effort, and that can get kind of mixed up with our ideas of what we're supposed to do in our life or to keep ourselves healthy. And it takes a little bit of the joy out of what we're doing here. And then we start to actually do the practice. So that's even before we start practicing. We start to actually do the practice, and we find ourselves judging our experience, our state, and saying, "Ah, well, I need to be doing it this way, or this is the way that's going to make me the sharpest, or that's going to be the best for me in the long run."
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to say something about that? I think that was a mistake. Uh, I will ask you to speak later, though. So, okay. So we have these different ways which we can both think of meditation practice as something more effortful than it needs to be, and in fact, more effortful than is actually helpful for practice. And then we can actually engage with practice in a way that becomes kind of effortful and laborsome. And so part of what we're going to work with today, and part of what I'm talking about today, is actually intentionally bringing pleasure, bringing a good feeling into practice. And many of us have practiced together, and I often harp on this in different ways and subtly try to bring it in, even if it's something as simple as just noticing a way of breathing that's pleasant to you. Or, I know I've heard Peter or Brooke different times give the instruction to say, hey, notice something that feels good right now. So that starts to tune us towards a different way of being. And in fact, this is kind of a magical thing. You can do that at any time. You can even do it at times where you're not trying to do meditation practice. I often, some of you know, I have historic and ongoing issues sleeping frequently. And the other night I was laying in bed and I was like, oh, man, this sucks again. And then I was like, all right, what feels the best right now? And I was like, oh, it feels pretty good to just be like laying here and not have anything to do. Like, it feels, feeling blankets on my body. That just feels nice. Like just a warm blanket on. That feels good. Um, so you can do this all sorts of different times, and it's amazing to see the type of shift that can happen in your mind. As you start to shift towards that, you shift towards more ease. It actually makes the practice easier. So it's kind of like a flywheel or a positive feedback loop that's like, oh, when I notice that things aren't only sucking, it becomes easier to actually relax into things. And when I relax into things, it becomes easier and more productive to notice that, oh, certain things don't feel that great. And I can be honest about that and practice with them differently. So step one is just that. It's, whatever kind of practice we're doing, taking on a intention to actually notice something that feels pleasant. And that might be just a subtle, small part of the beginning if there's a certain practice that's different that we're going to eventually go do, or it might be some ongoing part of our practice. We can keep this sense in. Some of you have practiced with me or with Peter um, with this concept of feeling tones, and this the concept of feeling tones, in at least in that verbiage, comes from Buddhist psychology, but it's really just a human experience that I think we're all very familiar with. It's this simple. Some things feel good, some things feel bad, and some things don't feel either good or bad. So it's nothing too groundbreaking. But the interesting thing is that we can actually train ourselves to work and pay attention to that feeling of, oh, this feels good, or that feeling of, oh, this doesn't feel so good, or the much more nebulous feeling of, oh, I don't really have a sense of whether this feels good or bad. Um, each of those are associated with different types of responses in our psychology. And again, none of this is going to be very surprising. When things don't feel good, we try to go away from stuff. And that often is the root of a lot of difficulties and problems. We can sometimes make things worse for ourselves by avoiding things that don't feel good for us. And kind of like the big scary boogeyman. I don't know if any of you got scared about stuff as a kid. I certainly did. It becomes like a bigger and bigger issue sometimes the less we pay attention to it. So a little sidebar story here. Um, this is something that's often actually discussed, especially with regards to pain and our experience of pain or discomfort. And I remember I had read some before I had gone on any meditation retreat. Also, shout out, there's a diabetes sangha meditation retreat coming out later this year. Hope all of you will be there. Um, Before I had ever gone on a retreat, I had heard I'd read some different books about people's experiences. I was like, oh man, you could feel like discomfort and then you just like take it apart psychologically and then there's not any pain anymore. There's just different sensations, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought that was so magical, and I was so curious about this when I first went on a retreat. And I went on a retreat, and very predictably, reliably, I was in a lot of pain at some point. Don't worry, the diabetes Sangha retreat is not going to be as gruesome as some other meditation retreats are. But, you know, I was in a considerable amount of pain at some point, and then I was like, okay, great. This is a chance I'm going to pay particularly close attention to this pain. And it's going to be this magical, liberating experience. And what I noticed is that every time I tried to move my attention to wherever the pain would actually just disappear almost entirely. There was no sensation of pain. And at first I was like, oh, I guess that's fine. No problem. And then it happened after a few times, and I started getting pretty annoyed because then as soon as I would move my attention away, it would become an issue. And then it became more and more distressing, ironically, that the pain was going away. Moral of the story there is so often if we are actually able to, and where this ended up going as I've sat more retreats is you can actually train your mind to pay a subtle amount of attention to a signal, like, for example, pain, without putting my whole mind somewhere. So I can be talking to you all at the same time as I'm noticing my seat, which I'm doing right now. I have a lot of attention actually on what my butt and my back feels like on this couch. And at the same time, I'm talking to you, and somehow words are coming out. I won't try it too much, otherwise, I'll start saying weird stuff. But the point is, you can have an ability to sense parts of your body in just a loose enough way that you can actually get some more information. And that more information, from a neuroscience perspective, that helps feed our brain better information that maybe tells us, hey, it's not so scary. So there's a whole area of neuroscience, which I won't get too much into today. I think that we're going to cover it in a future week. Um, but it's called predictive processing theory. And the overall idea is that there's a constant communication between our brain and our brain being part of our body, but our brain and the rest of our body. So there's this constant communication of going back and forth, different signals going back and forth. And it's actually not that our body is just telling us what's going on. The signals from the body come up to the brain. They say one thing. The brain then says, okay, well, here's what I'm, contributing to the conversation. And then those signals then actually regulate what happens in the rest of the body. And then those signals come back up. So there's this constant conversation between the body and mind. And this is a widely accepted theory and understanding of how the brain works now, predictive processing theory. And by giving ourselves more information, and particularly more information where we can feel physiologically safe, ways of feeling physiologically safe would be like, regulating our breathing, or breathing a little softer, or noticing what feels comfortable or good, coming back to that. So these are all ways of telling our body and our brain, hey, everything's actually okay. Even though there's a little ache in my leg or something like that, it's actually not a groundbreaking problem. It doesn't need to get my heart rate up. It doesn't need to trigger some frustrating or very difficult memory from my past or something, because everything's actually okay right here, right now. Okay, how did we get on that? Oh, yes, negative feeling tones and the attention. So we have these negative feeling tones. We have positive feeling tones just the same. And again, nothing groundbreaking here for you all. When something feels good, we tend to want more of it, and so it can create a kind of a craving. And sometimes this is very subtle, and sometimes it's not so subtle. I think we're all familiar to some extent with both. But that craving, so we can consider it craving, and maybe there's some amount of judgment around whether that's good or bad or okay or not. But we can also just consider that there's a positive feedback loop going on. And this is kind of like, some of you know that in my work, recently I've focused a lot on gamification and kind of the way that different technology can become very addictive. And this is the same type of feedback loop, right? It's like something feels good, and then you want more of it. And so they then try to figure out, oh, this thing feels good for this person, so let's feed them more of that. Very, very simple. Sometimes actually making it happen, for millions of people is not so simple, but the core concept is simple. And so the core concept with our meditation practice is also very simple. The more we can bring some of this pleasure, this good feeling into our practice, it actually helps us drop deeper and get less entangled with our thoughts. And so not only our thoughts, but our environment, or perhaps certain unwholesome habits that we have in our everyday life. So as we start to feel more and more pleasure and sense of okayness just sitting here and doing whatever practice we're doing, becomes much more easy to disengage with other things, whether it's something in our immediate experience, or whether it's something later on in the day, and we're now better resourced because we're like, hey, I actually already, I don't need to supplement my dopamine, my base hedonistic drive with a scoop of ice cream or something because I had a wonderful practice earlier today and I just feel excellent. Okay. So these are feeling tones. I won't speak so much more. There's a lot to be said about feeling tones, but that's not so much what we're focused on. We're mostly focused on the positive side and how we can feed this sweet feeling. And we'll start in just a minute or two and practice by noticing what's pleasant. As we go, you might also notice other experiences, which this is more the topic of next week. Um, but you may start to notice, oh, okay, as I start to notice what feels pleasant or what feels relaxing or what feels gentle or something of that nature, you might start to notice, oh, like the feelings in my body are changing. And you start to get maybe stronger signals. Maybe you get a little nice feeling in your head or a warm feeling in your heart. For example, these are sometimes things that we practice with intentionally. And that creates a really strong signal for your mind to then come back to where you don't need to work uphill. You don't need to make your practice so much work. You can say, hey, this feels good. Why would I pay attention to these thoughts? They suck. I'm going to pay attention to these great feelings instead, It's a no-brainer. And forget about a no-brainer for your actual conceptual ego mind, but it's a no-brainer for your body. Your body intuitively knows, oh, yeah, that feels good. I'm going to go more towards that. It's easier for me to let go of this other stuff. Right? I think that's a good place to stop for today. There was something that I was going to say earlier, um, especially thinking about Dr. Patel being on today. The word for these feeling tones in Pali, which is the word that most Buddhist psychology is encoded in, is Vedana. Vedana. And DP, you can jump in and tell me if this is true, although I read this in a Lance Cousins book, so I think it's true. Is that one way of translating that or understanding the root of what that means is it's a way of knowing. It's a way of knowing. And so as we practice with this today with good positive feeling and leaning into our noticing of that, you can also think about this as a way of knowing your reality, a way of knowing your mind through these pleasant feelings. And the unpleasant feelings are also a way of knowing your mind and a way of knowing your reality, but we'll lean more towards the pleasant. Dr. Patel is conspicuously silent right now, so I probably didn't get it right, but it sounds really good, so stick with it. All right, let's do a little bit of practice. Um, so if you're not already, you can get yourself in a comfortable posture for meditation. As you start to get situated, you can let your eyes rest and come to close. But even more than that, let your eyes be soft in the sockets. And let your face start to be heavy. Let your tongue be heavy and your scalp. Follow that wave of heaviness and softness and relaxation. Just follow that down. I won't give so much instruction, but just following this through your body. not forcing yourself to relax, just seeing what will drop on its own with a little gentle nudge of attention. As you start to follow this wave through your body, you can tune in also to your breathing. Maybe any number of different ways. Maybe your blood sugar is high and it's a little shallow and fast. Maybe you're feeling very settled and it's subtle and slow, or you're feeling active and you're taking big, deep breaths. Everything is welcomed, just breathing in the way that feels like a gift to yourself. Letting your breath be a gift to yourself. And it's completely expected that your mind will keep going and stewing on different things or being hazy. Could be doing all sorts of different things right now. And rather than pulling it away sharply or trying to cut it off from whatever it's doing, seeing if you can actually relax into the experience of your mind having wandered. So relax and then gift yourself this breath. So this is intentionally a very vague instruction. And the hope is that you'll just hang out with whatever feels good about your breathing right now. Hanging out with particular parts of your breath that feel so sweet. Maybe it's a certain moment of the exhale, or maybe it's when the inhale becomes an exhale and there's a sense of relief. Maybe it's the sense of life that comes on the start of an inhale. Maybe it's a feeling around your nose or around your chest or belly. rather than locking your attention on the breath. Try to intentionally unlock and open up your attention and just gently place it on a part of your breath that feels sweet, comforting, gentle, pleasant. And if you find this supportive, you can particularly notice your breathing in and out of your heart area. And if you don't need that, no problem. If you're already feeling a really palpable sense of this pleasant breathing, just stick with that. But if you like, you can really allow your breath to rest in your heart, letting your lungs be felt and letting them nourish your heart. Leaning on our first week of practice, your intention, which is the core of your practice, is actually just to be with what is pleasant and sweet and gentle. And that's the case whether your mind is wandering, whether it's stuck on this thing or that thing, whether you like what your breath is doing or you don't. In any of those cases, just being with what is sweet and gentle and pleasant. I invite you to even picture in your mind's eye. Perhaps you can imagine picturing from your heart that there's somebody, a specific person in your life that really inspires that for you, and that they're right here with you. Perhaps this is a teacher or a mentor of some kind, could be a dear friend, could even be an animal, loved one, somebody that you have a certain kind of intimacy with, that you feel seen by. Paying attention particularly to this heart area, just imagine that you're just breathing with them and you're expressing your best intentions to each other through your breath. without words through a feeling in your body. Anything that feels good about that. Remember, our intention is to feel what's pleasant, what's sweet. Just lean into that and let that take root in your bones. Let that circulate through your body. You don't need to push it through your body. You don't need to force it to move anywhere. It will take its own time, giving any pleasant feelings space to just exist and spread. And anywhere you notice some resistance, maybe it's certain thoughts, or maybe it's uncomfortable feelings, maybe it's something else, some tension in your body. You can both relax into it and see if you can just soften any physical tension. And then let that resistance or even that doubt, let it just soak for a while in a warm, pleasant feeling around it. It doesn't need to actually change or go away. Just let it have its own space in a pleasant, warm experience. To the extent that this pleasant, warm experience is not accessible for you right now, it's completely normal. I've spent many years of my practice like that, just relaxing. There's no warmth, then let it be a pleasant coolness. Let it be a pleasant absence of warmth, pleasant relaxation. Just sitting like this another few minutes. Whatever thought arises, whatever sound you hear, whatever feelings come and then pass away, letting them be held with a pleasant mind. Try to find what's real, and what's real becomes more distant. Try to end delusions, and delusions multiply. Followers of this way have an all embracing place. The moon in the sky and its reflections in the waves. Taking a few more moments, perhaps to soak up a final bit of time to yourself, perhaps to share some best wishes with others, whether it's others here or others in your life. As you feel satisfied, and start to draw your practice to a close, taking some deeper breaths, making some small movements, coming on back.